Hello and welcome back to Games and Thoughts. I'm Traxton.
And I'm Michael.
Today we'll be talking about the criminal justice system and just what we think in general, what we think of different degrees of imprisonment among groups, and all that good stuff. So I guess to start, what do you think about incarceration in general? Like, do you think it's a good idea as a general standard?
It's essentially just grown-up timeout. Because we, take them in and we put them out, expecting change to happen, but we didn't actually do anything.
Right, yeah, I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of really strange in the sense that you're just putting someone in a cage and, like you said, just saying, all right, you're in timeout now, just think about what you did.
It's I thought it was it kind of goes back to the nature versus nurture argument.
Interesting. How so?
Because right now with our criminal system the way it is, I think it's more of the nature type where it's believed that people are bad because that's the way they are, but I tend to believe that it's more nurture in that people are the product of their surroundings. So if you grow up in a bad part of town where there's lots of gang violence and everything, I think you're definitely more likely to get into gang activity, if only just because of people's natural pack mentality.
Yeah, right. Well, basically what you're saying is there's an implicit assumption in the way we imprison people that they're just bad and they're not going to change.
I think this is kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but I think we have to do more to help them change. That's the main problem, is that we're not doing anything to try to change them. It does happen. There's the stereotypical criminal that goes to jail and finds Jesus and stuff.
Although I would argue that's not a good thing.
Well, it happens occasionally, and that's nice because then they do change for the better, but usually it's just, sit there, think about what you did, and then you get let out, and nothing has actually changed inside of them, in their head.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's especially a problem with the non-violent drug offenders, which, by the way, we have some statistics here. 48.6% of federal prisoners are non-violent drug offenders, and 16% of state prisons. First of all, that's a ridiculously high number.
Yeah, it is.
And second of all, the idea of imprisoning somebody for doing drugs doesn't really make any sense. You're not addressing if you don't want them to be doing drugs, then you're not addressing the problem of them doing that by just locking them up.
Yeah. In that case, they need an intervention, or they need therapy or something. If it's even a bad drug that they're doing, I'm sure a large number, like you said, non-violent drugs.
Yeah, well, that only means that their crime wasn't violent, so it could be any drug.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you say non-violent drugs, I I obviously think of like marijuana, that stuff.
Clearly, right?
And it's ridiculous that that's illegal because, like, the reason it's illegal is because the paper companies wanted to make money.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people
And
don't know the history behind why that became illegal in the first place.
I might seem like a drug person for knowing that fact, but I'm totally not.
Right.
And yeah, it's strange that that's illegal and has become like this. Well, it's not. It's becoming more accepted now, but like it's strange that it was culturally like a taboo thing. Like it became like a really bad thing.
Yeah, and like you said, the stigma's kind of fading from it now. But I mean, just to compare it to alcohol, like there's no reason alcohol should be legal while marijuana's not. It just doesn't make sense if you're basing it on how dangerous the drug is.
And you could say the same thing about tobacco.
Yeah, and then to imprison people for that, like we said, is just, it's crazy.
Yeah. I understand, so I understand taking people to prison for like drunk driving and that stuff, because that's actually dangerous, but taking someone to prison because you found like I don't know the street measurements, but like a bag of drug in your pocket, that's like, it's not hurting anyone.
Right. I mean, most of the time it's just a grown consenting adult who wants to change their consciousness in some way. Like the idea that you're going to put someone in jail for that is just bizarre.
And then to take it further, the like taxpayers have to pay for them to sit in jail,
right?
Because they got caught with a plant that they're not supposed to have.
Right.
It's just a little ridiculous. Like, we're laughing at how ridiculous it is.
Yeah. Right. I mean, this is an analogy I've heard someone else use. I'm not sure who it was. But imagine if you were on an island with like 10 other people, and one of the people decided, hey, that plant over there, you can't have that, and we're going to put you in a little box that you can't get out of if you have it. Like, it would just be absurd, and nobody would take that person seriously. But we just live in a world where that's culturally accepted.
But then, I don't know, there are worse drugs, like heroin and meth and stuff.
Yeah, I'm still not sure what I think on the. I mean, I think in that case, you just, whatever's going to result in less people doing it is better. But I'm not sure if criminalization is even the answer for that.
Yeah, criminalizing drugs is interesting because it's like people are still going to get it,
right?
One way or another. And we saw this with like prohibition. Like, they made alcohol illegal, but then we came up with a million ways to get around it.
And it was, I mean, I guess they obviously saw how impractical that was in a very short amount of time. But for some reason. And that's another thing. I mean, the government could be making a lot of money in taxes by decriminalizing drugs. So even from that perspective, I don't get it.
Yeah, like, I don't know the exact numbers coming out of like Colorado or Washington or wherever else, but I know that they're making money.
Yeah, I don't really get it. I think it's mostly the residue of you know, hardline conservative, you know, it'll be the downfall of American culture if it's legalized.
Yeah.
Which really is where most of the problems in this country come from, in my opinion. But that's another talk.
Like there's that old Reefer Madness video.
Oh yeah. Everything will just fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess we agree that criminalization is bad, but I think there's a problem with, I think most of the people in the public sphere who talk about that kind of like, they can almost hurt their point by promoting the drugs at the same time. Like you can give a rational argument for it being decriminalized without coming out and like saying, hey, that everyone should be doing this.
That's a strange argument to say that like everyone should be doing drugs.
Oh yeah, which gets made surprisingly a lot.
So we talked about it earlier, but what do you think what's the correct way to rehabilitate people?
Yeah, well, I think we need a complete shift in how we approach criminal punishment. I mean, something like Finland's system, or I think Norway is actually what I'm thinking of, where it's geared almost entirely towards rehabilitation. Like, you look at their prisons, quote, and they just look like little houses that these people live in while they work with them and try to make them better. Like, I don't see any downside to that. Like, and I think the reason there's pushback against that is because we have this really strong American idea of retributive justice, where if you do something bad, you need to be punished for it. Like, something bad has to happen to you as a result of your bad action. And I think we need to ditch that concept and just work towards making everything better where we can.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like a mental illness type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where they need to take medication in order to kind of like right that stuff.
Right. And I mean, really, any bad action can be framed as a form of like extremely acute mental illness. Like everything wrong you do comes down to something faulty that happened inside your mind. It's like when you look at it from that perspective, it's easy to see that we need to just gear towards fixing that.
So we need to focus more on like getting to the root of the problem instead of like every time someone does something wrong we put them in jail. We need to have more focus on like, okay, why are you doing this, and let's try to correct that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we are coming up on time. I guess in closing, just try to make the world a better place, people. You know, no need to throw people in cages. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I guess it's kind of related to what we were saying, but don't be afraid to go to therapy or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's another interesting conversation. The stigma around therapy.
Maybe we'll get into that later, but
yeah, perhaps.
For now, like, if you're having thoughts about doing bad things, like, don't be afraid to talk to a professional who's qualified to help you with that.
Right, yeah, for sure. And so there, I guess we'll close. Be sure to follow Games and Thoughts wherever you can. We'll have links down in the description. And we'll see you guys next time.